I sat in my room, my stomach raging with the joy of anticipation, and my thoughts racing with unquenchable longing. Indeed, I was in the mood for male companionship, the kind that conjures up tantalizing thoughts. However, what do you do when you have a 22-year-old nephew sleeping peacefully in the room? If you're anything like me, you might choose a more playful and seductive path. So with courage and perhaps recklessness, I decided to fulfill the desire that had been born in me. My gaze fell on my nephew, and a sly smile played across my face. What is he up to? It would be revealed now. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder to wake him up, and when he opened his eyes, I made up a story about a noise outside, urging him to check it out. It was really just an excuse to encourage him to get up. My strategy was worked out flawlessly. He came out of his slumber visibly agitated, and I greeted him with a mischievous grin. He rose cautiously, as if traversing forbidden territory, which in a way he was. With a brisk gait, he walked out of the room, adding to the drama of the moment. His eyes quickly adjusted to the semi-darkness, and I noticed him walking toward the door, seemingly looking for someone. I had woken him on the pretext of unusual sounds outside, but he knew my intentions. He moved down the hallway with the composure of a movie character. His bare feet glided silently across the floor, each step a triumph over the silence of the night, though his true purpose was only to find out what the noise was outside. My nephew looked out the window for a moment, as if in search of something elusive. When he returned, he informed me with a somewhat puzzled expression that nothing terrible had happened. After a brief pause, he decided to go to the bathroom. In the meantime, I turned on the light in my room and settled down on my bed, contemplating my plan. Should I take action? Would my nephew share my desires? I leaned back against the headboard and exhaled, weighing the decision of whether to continue his little joke or abandon it altogether. As soon as I made my decision, I was startled by a noise coming from the bathroom. It was an unusual sound, reminiscent of a faint whisper. I quietly got out of bed and walked to the bathroom door, curious as to what my nephew might be doing in there. Was he doing something he shouldn't be doing? My emotions were in turmoil, and my thoughts began to drift toward disturbing possibilities, but I tried to keep my composure, assuring myself that it was just a play of my imagination. Eventually, I decided to go back to bed and let him be alone, so I crawled back under the covers, trying to distract myself from the haunting images my mind was drawing. The minutes dragged on for what seemed like an eternity as I struggled with my thoughts. Then I heard the bathroom door creak open, and my nephew came out. I tried to look calm as he entered the room. "I don't want to sleep anymore," I said, forcing myself to smile to encourage him to stay awake. "Do you want to keep me company while we make breakfast?" He grinningly accepted my invitation, and we headed into the kitchen together. As we prepared the food, I tried to calm my raging hormones, but the tension wouldn't subside, and I could feel my heart pounding harder than usual. I tried desperately to focus on something other than these disturbing thoughts. After breakfast, we gathered around the table, making light conversation about any topic that came to mind. I tried to keep a lighthearted tone during our conversation, but my emotions were turbulent, and every time my nephew smiled at me, I felt a flutter in my stomach that made me wonder. There was an issue that I hadn't disclosed that caused me sleepless nights when I questioned his normalcy. My nephew was obsessed with me. He was constantly looking for something beyond what I could give him. What bothered me the most was the fact that he didn't see me as his aunt. Ever since he entered his teenage years, I could feel him looking at me, filled with desire. Every smile and kind gesture seemed to have a deeper meaning. I tried to brush off my feelings and explain that he was just a young man, but I couldn't help but notice the way he watched me when we were in each other's company. In retrospect, that was why he was so eager to join me that morning, not to have breakfast, but to be in my presence, to share those fleeting moments together. As we talked, his eyes stayed fixed on me, as if longing for something more than simple companionship. I tried my best to keep my composure, but every word he said seemed to have an alternate meaning. The thought that my nephew saw me as more than just an aunt never left me. I had always behaved respectfully, adhering to that principle without exception. Despite his lingering glances and gestures beyond the bounds of what was acceptable, I had consistently kept my distance, trying to ignore the underlying dynamics. However, circumstances had changed. I found myself at a point in my life where I craved companionship with a man, someone who could give me support and renew my sense of vitality. And the only man who was there for me at that moment was my nephew. I tried to suppress those thoughts, to convince myself that it was crazy to even think about it. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't deny the attraction she felt for him. A little fun never hurt anyone. After all, he wanted what I wanted too, and there was nothing wrong with that. At least I tried to convince myself of that, approaching my nephew with a determination that surprised me. Why should I feel guilty for wanting to have a little fun? My husband was away that day, and his absence presented the perfect opportunity to explore what was going on between my nephew and me. At that moment, I just wanted to live in the moment and enjoy it. After all, my husband wouldn't know about it. It would be an adventure between me and my nephew, a secret belonging to just the two of us. I knew he was playing with fire. I suggested we start an affair, a secret affair between him and me where no one else could know what was going on between us. I made it clear to him that whatever happens between us stays between us, a pact of silence that belongs to just the two of us. He agreed. He nodded his head, demonstrating his desire to have a secret affair with me. In that moment, it was clear to me that he, too, longed for the same thing I did. We knew we were going against all societal norms and risked losing everything, but we also knew we were living in the present moment, enjoying the passion and complicity we shared. After clarifying our intentions and agreeing to keep this adventure a secret, we allowed ourselves to revel in the moment. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not my husband, not whether what we were doing was right or wrong. The only thing that mattered was the here and now, the passion that was overwhelming us. We let ourselves go, giving ourselves completely to each other. There was no room for regret or doubt in those moments. There was only longing, a need to be together. We went into uncharted territory, exploring the boundaries of the morally permissible. But in the midst of it all, we found a liberation we had never experienced before. It was as if we had found a way out of the limitations and expectations that had weighed us down for so long. And there we were, floating downstream, regardless of the consequences. Because at that moment, all we wanted was to have a good time and enjoy each other's company. It was a great night, one of those nights that takes your breath away and makes you feel more alive than ever. It's been a long time since I've experienced that adrenaline rush, that feeling of being on the edge and letting the moment take you into the unknown. And the best part is that my husband never found out what happened between us that night. We kept our meeting a secret, protecting our adventure from prying eyes. It's only been a week since it happened, and my husband suspects nothing. We keep our secret between me and my nephew. But despite the seeming calmness, the desire to relive the experience is eating me up inside. However, things are much more complicated now. My husband is back home, and I am never alone at home. The temptation to give in to passion again is strong, but I also know that I can't risk being discovered. Spending time together could give us away and jeopardize my marriage. Although the thought of being with my nephew again tempts me, I know I must resist the temptation for everyone's sake. My nephew has started sending me WhatsApp messages expressing his desire to be together again. His persistence is tempting, but I know I can't risk being discovered. I have asked him to stop sending me messages explaining that my husband might see them and discover us every time my phone rings with a notification from him. I'm tempted to say yes to replay that moment again, but at the same time, I feel a chill run down my spine, reminding me of the danger inherent in each of his messages. I don't want to dismiss his messages, but I know it's the right thing to do. I can't afford to risk being exposed, so I beg him to stop communicating with me that it would be best for both of us to stay away for a while. Despite my pleas, his persistence does not abate. Every day I receive more messages from him expressing his desire to be with me again. To those who are listening to this story, I ask them if they think there is anything wrong with my adventure with my nephew. I know I was unfaithful to my husband, but does it really matter? After all, it's just an adventure, right? I think we've all had moments of weakness where we give in to temptation and allow ourselves to be carried away by desire. We've all been on an adventure at some point in our lives, haven't we? Still, I wonder what those listening to this story think of me. Do they condemn me for doing this? Do they condemn me for being unfaithful to my husband? I know that my act may seem questionable to some, but I also know that I am just a human being with the same wants and needs as everyone else. I'm not trying to justify my act, but I'm not going to blame myself for it either. So I ask you, what do you think of me? Was I wrong or is it okay? I would love for you to leave your comments.